in order to understand why I selected a subject as alien to females, as it is, I just need to give you a bit of a background.
Okay.
This story has been told to me by my mom. Of course, I was only 5. And we were in the country visiting relatives or friends, I'm not sure. And even though my mom was only 16 years older than myself, she was a very wise woman and quite lovely. And so she'd take me out on the front porch of this nice little house, and she'd say good night to the trees, and say good night to the flowers, and to the animals, etc., etc. And so this evening, she said, I came out, and I looked up, and I said, may I say good night to the stars? She said, absolutely, so I did. I said, what's a star? And she said, I don't know. I said, what's it made of? She says, I don't know. And by that time, she said, I became so frustrated. I said, what keeps it up there? And she said, I don't know. She said, I'll buy you a book. She claims that that was the beginning of my intense interest in the cosmos. And it turned me on to non-biological, as most women seem to tend to go, biological or botanical. I knew I was going to be in science. And so I turned instead to some aspect of study that would encompass the universe, that would give me some ideas to the beginnings, the structure, the content, as well as change. And to me, the concept of change is a vital part of life. And I find that many people resist it. So change is a characteristic of life and the cosmos and the geological structure of the earth. And I guess it fascinates me because everyone resists it.
So you became a scientist.
So yes, so I graduated and applied for the job, and the guy says to me, I wrote a good short story on this. He says, no chicks allowed. This is 1937. Wow. I don't know what chicks mean. I thought it meant chickens. So while he's not looking, I'm looking on the ground. And I say to him, sorry, sir, but I didn't bring any. He says, you didn't bring what? So I said, chickens. He said, what the blazes are you? You know, it was a comedy until he said, I mean goyles, you know, in a fine diction. And so I said, why? I have the same qualification. He said, because we only have one bathroom. So I said, big deal. When I go home, I got a mother and a father and a brother and me, and all 4 of us use one bathroom. He says, get out of my sight.
Wow.
Go become a secretary and leave me alone. So what did I do? I went back to school and started to work on the master's in climatology meteorology, and in 1939 I meet my husband, and he says, study something that you can get a job with. So I said, well, it's hard for me because, you know, I'm in a business that is not very popular. Well, suddenly I get a telephone call. My husband said, I found a job for you. And there it was in South Jersey. The United States Air Force had a research and development location there, and I applied for the job and got it. And I was a civilian meteorologist there. The reason why there were many women taking positions, because the men
were the Army.
Exactly.
Right.
I have always, from the day I met my husband, he was the one that trained me. He was much more knowledgeable than I, but I learned primarily that there was the establishment and there were people. And I soon saw the conflict between the two. I belong to several organizations, and two of them that are concerned in this instance are the Women's City Club, which is a prestigious 130-year-old, organization, and Madre, which is comparatively.
We know Madre.
Oh, you know Madre.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So one day I get a call, either from Vivian or from somebody in the office, in whether I was interested to go to Costa Rica and Guatemala to look at sweatshops. And of course, somebody asked me, I go. And we went and we looked, and believe it or not, we were not permitted to go to a sweatshop.
Wow.
But instead, they said you can go to the regular shops, which were no better. So the situation in a sweatshop is all women, they're lined up in tiers, and at the head of every, layer of sewing machines is a white chalkboard, and on the chalkboard it tells each operator how many skirts or jackets, whatever they're making, that they have to complete, and then if they can't complete them, they stay beyond their regular time, with, of course, there's no such thing as overtime. If they need to go to the bathroom, they have to raise their hand. Doors are locked. And the number of pieces that, I don't know how to sew, so I can't determine it, but it struck me when I read one of those that it was outlandish, for the speed with which they had to work.
You've never lost your ability
No.
to be engaged.
No.
And you've had a lot of hardship.
Yep.
And you still...
But see, I use, when I talk about that, I talk about, if you remember your chemistry lab, and you had a double pan balance. It was a scale, right, with two pans and a little regulator. So I say my life is like that. On one pan of the bad stuff in my life, and on the other side of the good stuff, and I'm the regulator. The trick in life is to keep them balanced. I'm Beatrice Anita Klier, but I no longer use the full name Beatrice because my mom objected to the way people pronounced the name. When she'd introduce me as, this is my daughter Beatrice, the people would say, hello Beatrice, and my mother had a fit. So when I got old enough to do it, I just call myself B or Bea.